G'day everyone, popping in for our usual Friday chat. Hoping that you don't see or hear too much noise. I've got construction going next door to me. There's a massive bobcat and I think they're laying concrete and doing all different things. So hopefully it won't be too noisy. I can only just hear it now, but occasionally it's going to get louder and louder. So hopefully it won't come up too strong. I'm just going to get my coffee out of the fridge. Now we are in pre-show, so if you do, whoops, I nearly showed what I was drinking my coffee then. That could have been terrible. What was Mark just saying? What was Mark saying? F-Stoppers just did a piece on foam board, and for Australians, these are available through here after doing much search. Yeah, I've got a few of them myself, Mark. I can't remember where I bought them from. I've got some really big, large sheets. It's really nice. It's quite thin. It's black on one side and white on the other. It's fantastic. So let's see who's in here anyway. So we've got Jamie's in here. I hope those fires aren't near you, David. Well, they are fairly close, but when I say close, they're probably about 30 kilometres away. So it's not that close to me. I think we're going to be in for a bit of a fire season like the US has. Today it's, what is it now? It's, on my watch, 40 degrees Celsius, which is around, 105 or something like that, degrees Fahrenheit. So it's a very hot day today. Really hot. Carl says, no downvotes yet. No, there's not yet. Give them time. The haters are always there, though. Carl. Oreo, g'day, Oreo. Good to see you in here as well. Happy Friday from Oz, everyone. Mark said. Mark's also said it's the beginning of the school holidays here with the Catholic schools first going up. Yes, they're just about to start here. And they have, see, unlike America, our school holidays are now for the next, I think, around 8 weeks. We have them over our summer period. I know you guys have it over your summer, which is the middle of the year. In Australia, they have all the holidays basically from starting from now. And they stay off till roughly the end of January. Mark's just saying happy Friday from Oz. Kelly's saying hello from northern Indiana. Sony Pony saying hello, all from Brisbane. Hang on, I'm just going to change my glasses so I don't have to look up so much. What else have we got? Mark's saying from Brisbane. Jamie said, Sony Pony, I'm just south of the border. Anyone else from south? That's southeastern Queensland, I think. Nice, love David's site, great info and great bloke. Funny, thank you so much, Sony Pony. Lowell says, hello, Sony Australian Coffee Man. Cheers from California. I must open my coffee, bear with me. Because it's that hot today, I could probably almost have 2 coffees. Oh, this first mouthful is going to be really good, guys. Ooh. Just let me see if I can just... Ooh! Can't show it, I'll be demonetized. Oh, God, that's good. I better move it away from my cameras, though, because I'll spill it, no doubt. Redland's saying, Sony Pony, Mark said, sure, from the Esky. Yeah, that's where I just got that coffee from, the Esky. I got it from the fridge. Brett said, g'day, David, Sony, coffee time. Yes, it certainly is. Carl says, hello, David and friends. Mark says, F-Stoppers just did that, and I was talking about that a minute ago. Richard said, hi. Mike's also saying, hey, everyone. Carl says, iced coffee. Yeah, iced coffee, yep. Langston says, good evening, everyone. Hello from Las Vegas. Hi, Langston. Philip says, hey, David, picked up the Sigma 56 1.4, just waiting on it to get here. That'd be a great lens, Philip. It seems to be great from all the reviews that are out there. Chris has said, hello, David, a cold, rainy day in Los Angeles, but still a Corona day. It's always a Corona day. Cheers. It's very hot here today, though, I can tell you that much. I nearly collapsed walking from the house into the studio. These are collapsible black and white board with Velcro. Oh, okay. Interesting, Mark. Langston said, did you happen to get a chance to see the mountains before sunset? Oops. We are in pre-show time, guys. Let me just bring that up so people don't get confused. Where are we? If you do want to skip this, guys, just you can skip until the end. I will stick a timeline down below. So if you don't want to watch the pre-show, I'm just waiting until roughly another 5 minutes or so, 6 minutes, and then we'll start. So if you don't want to watch the pre-show, just skip to where it says show start. Where were we? I'm here, can we start? JV has said. Langston said, I'm pissed. I didn't have my drones charged, cleared up for like a 20 minutes hike and snow-capped mountains in the background. Oh, that would have looked beautiful. Don't you have trouble now in the US, like LA, flying drones and stuff, though? I saw somewhere the other day that it's getting very strict over there. Shaku said, freezing Minnesota. Jean says, hello from Canada, just got off work, 7:30 p.m. here. Robin said, hey, from South Carolina. Chris said, no, I didn't. It was probably beautiful. Chad said, what's up, everyone? Peter said, frothy coffee. It is a frothy coffee, Peter. I love it. Ugh. Oh, is it buffering, is it? Is it buffering bad? It does say that, yeah, I'm not receiving data fast enough, but I don't think I can change my data while we're on the actual the cast, I don't think. Is it still buffering? Let me know if it improves. It could be something to do with the weather as well. I'm just looking up there because it doesn't look too bad up there. So let me know if it does improve, guys, because I'm curious to know if it does sort itself out. It said the chat was disconnected, so that's interesting. So let me know in the chat whether it's still buffering. I need to turn this down a little bit. Not bad now. Oh, hope it doesn't keep going though. Stop buffering. Yeah, I don't know what's going on. It may be something to do with the weather too, because it's that hot over here. It might be something to do with that. It's okay at the moment. Oh, we'll have to go and see if it improves. I've got a big shoot over the weekend. I'll talk about that in a minute once we actually start. I'd be great, actually. I'm going to be shooting all day tomorrow. Sounds okay now. I've seen some very cheap Sony 7200s come up online. What are your thoughts about buying second-hand gear? Sony Pony, what cheap 7200s are they, though? Are they the G Master lenses, Sigma? Which ones? G'day, Gerald. How are you? Because I'd be curious to know. I'd very rarely see G Master lenses come down in price, so I'm interested to see what lens that is you're talking about. The other thing too is the Tamron probably will be announcing more lenses next year. So I'm hoping that they release a 70-200 next year. G'day, Brett. Was buffering working okay now? We'll just have to see how it goes. I live in a bubble free of flight restrictions. Oh, okay. So as long as it's not too cloudy, nothing to worry about. Well, that's great, Langston. I know it's getting harder and harder to fly drones anywhere around the world. Apparently DJI now blocks you from flying. So like if you're in downtown LA, I don't think you can actually fly them. Let me know if that's right, but I think that may be the case where it's not letting you fly, but I'd be curious to know if anyone's tried it. How noisy is that fan on the Godox? Oh, he's asking Matt. Hero, greetings, Lord Oastler. G'day, Hero. How are you? I'm enjoying my coffee. We're still on pre-show, guys. We've got a couple more minutes. Hopefully this buffering stays away. I've got a number of things to actually show you. While we're on pre-show, let me bring this up and show you. Please join this site, Photography Videography School. Let me just drag this down. Please join us on here, guys, because I've set this site up for you guys. We're up to 3,000, basically 3,300 subscribers now, or members. Obviously, I put things in to say I'm coming online. We're getting people posting all the time. It's just a fantastic site, guys. So if you haven't joined it, please join us here because it's just a positive site. I haven't had anyone doing anything negative. If anyone is negative on there, we're going to be booted out. Can't stand prima donnas, so we're not going to put up with that sort of stuff in here. So it's basically a site for YouTube. Well, not just for YouTube. It's basically a site for photographers and also videographers. And I want it to be constructive and with nice criticism, rather than, you go into some of these sites and you get people on there that are so nasty and stuff like that. It's also a place where you can share your portfolios, your Instagram feeds, your web pages, anything. The only thing I don't allow is to go live on. That's just for me. But apart from that, please join us on there. It's just a fantastic site. Very, very positive. So please join us on that. I'd love to see you on there, guys. Let me just move this over. So we're still in pre-show. Just answering some questions. Mark says, not bad, but I don't do video. Okay. Peter says, yeah, there was a lag now. Our comments are coming up well before you comment on them. Interesting. It's saying on here that my primary stream is not very good, that I should consider lowering your bitrate, but I can't do that now because I've actually started. So I'm using Wirecast, and that has to be done before you actually connect. I don't think you can do it while you're actually connected. What else have we got? Peter says, yeah, there was a lag. Oh, that's right. Dutch Aussie Production said, hi, David. Thanks for your great videos. Thanks so much for saying that, mate. Mark said, I heard people are swapping out the fans inside the 150s. Interesting, because it's that noisy, is it? Brad says, I gave up drones. I have to drive too far away to get to airports. Get away from airports. Oh, okay. See, Australia, there's not as many, so it's easier to fly here. Langston said, flying drones in restricted areas, you can take off, but they require another button that says whatever happens is on you. Oh, okay, interesting. Good evening from Alabama. Carl said, don't forget the thumbs up, people. Yes, really appreciate if you could give me a thumbs up. Sony mug. Yes, it is a Sony mug. Don't you love it? And my T-shirt that Delta Dave sent me, I should do this as merch. I should start producing these as merch. I could have the Oastler Images merch and start selling them. I love these T-shirts. I have to thank Delta Dave so much. Oh, boy, this beer's going down too quick. Kelly said, oh, yeah, and have a look at my mug. How good is this mug? Seriously. I love it. Kelly said, small changes in focusing, A7 III. I changed back button focus to the joystick. It's easier to find on the back, IAF to on the AF on button paired with continuous AF AL on, a huge improvement for action. Well, I've actually got on mine, I've just got to find which camera it is, this one I think. Yeah, I've actually got back button focus, so I use the AF on as my back button focus, so I'm using that as the back button. But I mostly use the touch screen. This is what I'm using more and more now to do actual focusing, and I really love using it. So I'm using it that way, and I find it's great. But everyone does different things. I've got C1 there as my IAF, so I'm using that, and it's just a simple thing of pressing the back button on with the thumb. Basically, if you look there, I'll press that with the thumb, and then the C1 like that to have autofocus on, and that works really good. So I love having those two buttons together. That's the way that I work on my camera. I must do a video about all my settings again, actually. But everyone's different, Kelly. John said, I joined last week, great site. Thanks for joining us, John. They were Sony GM F4 for 1000. I love that. I'm going to do another review of that on the weekend, Sony Pony. So I'm going to post that next week sometime, I think, because it's been ages since I've talked about those lenses, so I'll do a full-on review with it. I'm doing shoots all weekend with a whole group of models. So it'll be going all day tomorrow, going around Melbourne, and then into the night. We're going to have a nighttime shoot. Langston said, waiting on the Tamron as well. Yes, so am I. Langston said, also there are apps like Skyward.io, which makes getting FAA waivers quick. Oh, okay, interesting. Dutch Production says, have you tried the Black Magic? Yes, I did. I've tried it. I quite liked it. It was a bit big for what I wanted to actually use, and I didn't think that the focus was just good enough for what I've used. After you've been using the Sony cameras, you get so spoiled, but the screen on the back was beautiful. I'm just hoping that Sony bring out a articulating screen, and then that's all I'll be basically using. So I'm just hoping that happens. But yes, look, it looked like a great camera. Jean says, do you use ring lights? Thought for use on portrait type shoots? No, I don't. I don't like the look of them, Jean. I don't like the catch light that it leaves in the eye. It's a certain look. You either love it or you don't. I don't like it personally, so I don't use ring lights at all. I used to use them years ago, and now I just don't like the look of it, so I don't use them. It's all a personal thing, though. Peter says, we have the same here, DJI app geofencing. I had a job the other week that was 150 metres outside the no-fly zone, and my P4 would not start. Had to walk away from the restriction until okay. Wow, interesting, Peter. Javier said, when is the angry Sony photographer coming back? Well, he may come back soon. I have thought of a thing that I'd like to do with Angry. So Angry may come back soon. Radmat says, I used the ring light recently and had some great photos. And that's the thing. It just depends on whether you like that look or not. I just don't like it. It's just not what I want to do. So it's just not me. But others love it. You know, and it's quite a nice high fashion type look. Like I said, I just don't like that catch light in the eye. It's just not something I find pleasant. But, you know, that's just a personal thing. Now, what time are we? I'm going to pull up this now because we're going to start the show, guys. So bear with me just for a second. Good evening, everyone, or good afternoon, as we are here in Melbourne, Australia. It's 105 degrees Fahrenheit today. We're 40 degrees Celsius at the moment. It's very hot. So I'm glad that I'm in the studio under air conditioning because it's super hot outside today. Got a great shoot planned for the weekend. I'm doing a whole stack of models over the whole weekend. Let me just say thank you to this person that just dropped. Ricrat gave me $5 here, so thank you so much, Ricrat. Didn't even ask a question, so I really appreciate that. Yeah, so I've got a full-on shoot with, I think it's around about 8 or 9, no, it's probably more than that, model groups tomorrow. I've got a few model groups that I'm actually shooting. These girls pay for these to build their portfolios and things like that, so I'm doing a number of different shoots with them tomorrow. I'm also going to test, well, again, I'm going to review the 70-200 and use that in one of the shoots as well, so I can do a review on that, but I want to do the f4 version for you so you can see how that looks. In the coming weeks, I'm going to start reviewing the lenses I do again, like just using that lens and concentrating on it. So I'll do the 70-200 f4, I'll do the 35 f1.4, obviously I'll do the Tamron again, the 28-75, and I'll even use the 55 in a shoot. So any lens that I use, I'm going to start shooting over the coming weeks and then reviewing it and posting that as a review for you all. Because it's been so long since I've done that, and I thought I might go back to that, filming that way. If you haven't seen the wedding video that I did the other day, the fusion video that I did, please have a look at that. And I've also put a behind the scenes, well, not behind the scenes, but I've put how I edited and my thought process about how that was done. And they were the last 2 videos that I actually posted. So it doesn't, even though I use Final Cut X, you don't have to be using Final Cut because it's the thought process that you could see that I'm using, and you could be using any video editor at all. It wouldn't matter. It just takes you through about what I was thinking and how I added the music and things like that. So please have a look at that and let me know what you think about the video that I just posted as well. I had a great time doing that. Again, I was doing Fusion, which is holding 2 cameras at the same time. And I'm quite happy with how that came out. Considering I'm not a videographer, that I'm just doing this as an extra service, it's something you really should consider looking at and trying to implement yourselves into your work, because it will certainly give you, expand your workload considerably, the number of people that will hire you. We're going to go through a number of stories in a few minutes, but apart from that, stay tuned for the videos that I will be releasing. I haven't released the next part to the behind the scenes wedding video. I will probably try and look at that early next week. Posting that because it's been a couple of weeks since I posted the last one, so I will try and get back to that for you in the coming days as well. Things have just been flat out because it's an incredibly busy time, I suppose, like you guys at the moment for us with Christmas coming in. I've got dance shoots that I've been doing, weddings I've been trying to get out and do that wedding video I had to edit and get out, so it's been incredibly busy. I suppose unlike a lot of YouTubers, I am working full-time as a photographer, so that side of it is still full-time for me. So, you know, those sort of things have to come first. So sometimes I might be a little bit slow. I am still trying to post videos every couple of days though, so I've still been putting that all through. Let me just quickly go to the questions before we start looking at today's stories. Sony Pony said he's seen some F4 Sony 70-200s for $1,000 AU, and that's a great price. I love my F4. That's why I'm going to do that on the weekend. I'm actually going to review it again. We were talking about drones, how they can't be used in a lot of places now. Someone asked if the angry photographer is going to come back, and I said he may very, very soon. What else have we got before we go on? We were talking about joystick as well for AF. You know, the funny thing is, on my A9 and the A7 III, I very rarely use the joystick. I nearly now just always use the touchscreen. So that's what I'm mostly using all the time. And I find the touchscreen is really good. And I really like using it. That's why I very rarely use a touchscreen at all. These things are just personal preferences though, and I really love just using the back button focus. I've got C1 as my eye autofocus, and then I'm just dragging my finger on the screen to actually manipulate the focus rather than using the joystick, and I'm finding I've got very, very quick at it. But it just depends on how you want to work. Obviously, a lot of other people just like to use the joystick. Michael, g'day Michael, good to see you in here. Brett says, on my 85, I use the eye focus on the focus button lock. Yes, on the lens itself. Yeah, that's a great feature if it has that. Ricrat gave me $5. Thank you so much for that, Ricrat. Peter says, no, I'm in Australia. Here we have to apply to DJI for exemption and provide a doc to DJI, and then we'll give you a code and you can fly, but have to fly as RPAS in Australia. Oh, that's interesting. I haven't come across anywhere yet where I can't fly, Peter. Scott Dan says, I don't like the look of the ring light much either. Makes people look demon-possessed sometimes. Yeah, and like I said, the ring lights are a personal preference. Some people love that look. It is quite a high fashion type look, but I prefer very contrasty type look of, say, using a wide zoom reflector now. I'm moving more in that way. I'm moving away from using diffusers, in fact. I'm starting to go more into using these wide zoom reflectors and then giving real hard punchy light. Now sometimes you can get a bit of shadow showing, but I don't mind that, and I think it's very fashion looking. I'm going to try that over the weekend, and you're going to see that in the coming days when I post these videos. I know the haters out there are going to be going, oh, you've got shadows showing. I don't care. Look, it's a personal thing. It's how I like to work, and I love that punchy, contrasty look. So I think I'm going to be probably doing that on the weekend. In fact, I don't even think I'm going to take a diffuser with me. I may, because we're going to go into the evening, I might just take an umbrella. So if I do want to use something that's diffused, I can use a shoot-through umbrella. That's probably the way I'm going to work, and I'm just going to use the wide zoom reflector to give that real punch look about it. Peter says, need lots of time planning a month or so. Is that talking about drones? Could you show us your 2 camera rigs sometime? Yeah, I'm going to do a video soon that talks about me doing fusion and how I go about it. Yeah, so that will be coming up soon. Creative Films is saying sup everyone. Dr. Exclusive is saying sup. Langston said online application's pretty quick. That's talking about the DJI, is it? Mark said, I have seen you are using Final Cut. No, it's not Express, it's Final Cut X. It's Final Cut Pro X. Yeah, I just said Express when I was on the video. I don't know why I said that. I was just thinking it was Final Cut Express. It's actually Final Cut X. It's the Pro version, the latest version. Hero said, I use my Maverick Pro in New Jersey and Florida all the time with no problems as long as you are not by the airport. Okay, cool. Opinion on the Sigma 24 1.4. It seems to be a great light, a great lens. The issue is, though, with any of the Sigma lenses, they're fine for still photography. So if that's where you're basing your work from, using Sigmas are fine if you're dealing with just photography. The second you start to go to videography, which is talking about tracking and doing stuff like that, which I'm doing with Fusion, they're nowhere near like a native lens. And that's why if it was me buying that lens, I'd buy the GM version. The GM version is way lighter than that lens. It's the same aperture. and it'll obviously focus like a dream. So if it was me, I'd be buying the GM 24 1.4. And in fact, when that's in stock somewhere, I might buy it. But apparently it's going to be Feb or something like that before we can get them here in Australia. Flying higher low says a ring flash can be nice as a filler. Yep. Hey David, do you have a Tascam DR10X? I just got a few kind of cool. No, I haven't. What do you think about it, Michael? Is it good? No, I haven't got any. I've been using basically the Zoom for everything. All the Zoom type microphones I'm using. Is that a microphone? Let me know. Hira says, question, I have an A6000 and want to get serious with my portraiture, so I found an A7 Mark I for 560 body only. That's a good price. And Comlight EF to E-mount adapter $40 and Canon 7200 f4. That sounds like a great buy, Hero. Should I sell my A6000 and lenses and go this route? Well, it depends. If I wouldn't sell it yet. You could, if you're not using your A6000 at all, well then you could, but do you have a backup camera? This is the thing. You're talking about they're doing serious about photography and doing portraitures and things like that. Have you got a backup camera? If you haven't, you need to keep a backup camera, and the A6000 would still be okay as a backup camera. So I wouldn't unless you've got another camera. Mark said the 7200 f4 has an issue with the felt within the back of the barrel degrading and dust particles falling off onto the sensor. I'm doing a YouTube about this and how to fix it soon. Wow, Mark, I've had no problems at all with mine, and I've used that like crazy. Interesting to see what your video actually says there. All right, guys, I'm going to go to the first story. So let me just put first story on here. And then we'll flick to this, and let me come down to here. And I'm going to have to move this down a little bit. Now, I know I talked about this the other day, but I wanted to do it live because I did a video about it, talking about how good the Sony cameras were. I'm just filling up my coffee cup, by the way. It's the coffee cup is going down a bit faster today because it's so warm. All right. I'm not sure whether you know, I'm sure most of the Sony users out there have looked and seen that how well Sony did in the DP review with cameras of the year and things. And they've got a number of cameras and hardware that has basically topped the charts. And it doesn't surprise me at all. In fact, I've said all along that I do still believe that the A7 III is the best value camera that you can still buy. Even with the new releases like what Nikon have given us and also what Canon have given us, they still haven't beaten what the A7 III has. And in fact, it's still the only camera like that in that price range that you can get that's mirrorless. It has the dual card slots if you're dealing with full frame. And I've said to you all along that I will never shoot a professional job again with one card slot cameras. I still use my A7R II, but I'm taking a shot at the same time with my A7 III or something like that. So I'm always doing a backup that way. I'll never buy another camera though that has a single card slot due to the fact that they can fail. Now I know everyone goes, oh, they don't fail, but they do. I mean, if you look online, there's failures happening everywhere. And in fact, it happened to me and I was only saved by the dual card slot. That could have, look, I would have still been paid because it's in my contract, but the damage that would have done for one of my high-end clients, I'm not going to say who they were, but it was a big paying job. I mean, a really big paying job. And if I couldn't give them the images that they wanted, I may have lost that client, and that would have been devastating to me, my business and my reputation. And this is something that you've got to think about. Redundancy is really important. I know people then go, you can use Wi-Fi and all that. Well, I just say crap about that because it drains your battery. It's not reliable. And if you're dealing with RAW and shooting fast, it's never going to keep up with that. If the signal drops, it's not backing up at that time. So it's just not practical. Canon and Nikon should have put dual card slots into those cameras. That's it. That's what they should have done. For the prices they're asking for those cameras, they should have put that in there. So if you're looking at these awards, how amazing did Sony do when you think about it? So they got the A7 III was the camera of the year, and that is completely understandable, and I'll talk about this in a minute. They also gave the best compact fixed lens camera was the A7R Mark VI. And the lens that they gave, which was the best lens, the best zoom lens of the year, was the Tamron 28-75. And the best prime lens of the year was the Sony 24 1.4 GM. So look at, I mean, it's just amazing. The only thing I haven't got here really, well, I've got the two of them. I've got the RX100 Mark V, and the reason why I chose that was because I wanted the 1.8 aperture and I wanted the internal ND. So that's the reason why I went for that one. I could have taken it back and bought the latest version, but I wanted to keep it due to that fact. I will be buying the GM, that when I can get that in stock. I mean, it's probably going to be February or something like that before I can actually get that and walk into a shop, but I'm not in any hurry for it. But I will get that sometime next year. I might even get that the same time perhaps that the new Sony A7S S3 is announced or something like that. I might get that. I wasn't originally going to get that lens because look, I'm not against GM lenses. I mean, they are amazing lenses, but I don't like the weight. And the thing is that why I changed my mind about that lens was because it is so light. I mean, it's incredibly light. It's only, I think it's only 400 odd grams. Super light, super sharp. It's got the declicked aperture ring on the lens there, which is just beautiful if you're doing video. You've got the AFM manual focus switch on there, and you've also got your eye detection focus button there that you can use as well. So that seems to be an amazing lens that has beautiful bokeh. You've got the 1.4 aperture, super light, so I can use that on a gimbal. It seems to be that will be an amazing lens, and everyone that's got it raves about it. I know Michael and Gerald, who are in the chat here, have it, and they love that lens as well. In fact, they've been posting images in the photography and videography school on Facebook, and they look beautiful. So I will get that. Particularly, I'll get that because I'm doing Fusion and I want to stick it on the gimbal. At the moment, I've been using the Tamron. And the problem with this is that now that I like using this so much for still photography as well now. And so when I'm doing the Fusion video, like what you just saw with the last video that I posted, I use the Tamron on the A9 actually. So that takes me out of being able to use it for stills because I'm holding this on the gimbal, and then in the other hand I'm using my A9 or the A7 III, it's the other way around actually, and I'm just taking still shots. So basically I'm walking down like this with this on a gimbal, you've just got to picture it, and then this is taking still shots at the same time. So I'm just walking like this. So that's a bit of a problem in the fact that I lose this for stills, and I do like using this so much for stills. So what I probably will do is get the GM 24mm, and that will become my gimbal lens. Then I can stick this onto my A9 or the A7 III and the other camera, and it does give me then the option to zoom in and out quickly to be able to take shots, you know, like as the bride's walking down the aisle or something like that. I mean, it does look funny. Like I said, I'm going to do a video and show how I do all this soon, but you know, and that's one reason why I think now I definitely will get that GM lens. And Sony have done some voodoo-y things with that lens, keeping it small. It's the same filter size. I think it's 67mm as the Tamron lenses, so it'll share the same NDs, and it seems to be, you know, a really great lens. So that's one thing that I'll definitely be getting. I've already got the Tamron. In fact, I was even thinking about buying another Tamron, but I don't think I'll get another Tamron. I think I'll just get the GM version and then just use it as a prime. I do love shooting primes. I mean, I'm still shooting primes all the time. My second camera, when I'm not doing Fusion, my second camera has always got primes on it. It will always have the 35 and the Batis 85, and that's the way it works. So one camera will have the Tamron 28-75, and the other camera will have the primes running, and then I'll just be put them on my belt, and then I can just take each one up and just keep shooting. So that's the way I'll probably work. So I was thinking about getting another prime because I really do adore the Tamron lens. I know when we were shooting that Fusion video the other day, Ben and Gino, who were with me, were just amazed about how close the focusing was. If you look at the video, you'll see where I moved into the rings, and it really did go close into the wedding rings, and that's all done just with the Tamron. It's almost macro, and I love that aspect of using that lens. Sharp as, the rendering's beautiful, the colors are beautiful, so it's just a great lens. The other thing too, like I said, I've bought the Mark V, and I do love that. I basically got it because I also wanted to put time-lapse on there, and that's the camera that I'm going to start doing time-lapse on because it's all built in. And I've just got the... Did I have it here? No, it's in my bag, I think. I've just got the stand, and I can basically just put it on the little stand that it comes with, point it up to the sky, and then I can do time-lapse of the clouds and things like that I want to use in my Fusion video. So that's basically what I'll be doing for that aspect of it. So I didn't really need the zoom lens as such, even though that's such a great camera. The A7 III, well, what can I say about the A7 III? I mean, does it surprise anyone that you know, this camera, basically, I've got cameras all over the place here. Does it, you know, amaze anyone how this really is the camera of the year? I mean, like I said, it's the only one that's got the dual card slots. It's got incredible autofocus. It's got incredible video. The touchscreen, like I said, I really like the touchscreen. I know a lot of you don't like it, but I really do like the touchscreen, and I'm using that now all the time to gain focus. It has one advantage over the A9. The A9, you can't use a touchscreen when you rise up to the viewfinder, which bugs the hell out of me. I don't know why they don't add that to the A9. The A7 III you can while you're looking through there, and I'll just basically put it up to my face and I'll just use my hand to move around the focus where I want it to be. And it works superb. It's fantastic in video. Like I said, focus is amazing. Low light. Basically, it's just as good as the A7S II is. Unless you go to ridiculous ISO. But if you're dealing within normal ranges, you know, 6400, even higher than that, it's equal to what the A7S II has. So boy, I can't wait to see what the A7S III has. But overall, it's just amazing. Never lets me down, never misses. You've got 10 frames per second. It has silent shooter if you want it. I don't use it, but it has it. If I'm dealing with silent shooter, I'll use my A9. But it's really got everything you need. And like I said, it's got more than enough controls. I know people always talk about ergonomics, but I love the feeling of this. Now, I'm only short. I mean, I'm only 5'6", so I'm only short. But, you know, I just adore feeling this camera. Like when I pick up Ben's camera now, he's got the D810. I can't stand holding that stuff anymore. You know, I just don't want to go anywhere near that. And I really like it. I've got grips, but I don't even use those grips because I like it being that small. I know a lot of you do like using the grips, but I don't. But, you know, does it surprise anyone that has been voted the camera of the year? I don't think it does. The dynamic range is nuts. And I've shared multiple photos showing what the recovery range is of that camera. In fact, I never ever shoot HDR anymore. I used to. I don't have to anymore because the dynamic range is so high in that camera that you just don't need to do it. So the dynamic range is amazing. The files are beautiful. You know, I mean, what more could you need? So I'm going to open it up to chat before we move on to the next story. It's just time for another coffee. Hero says, "Okay, true. I don't have another camera. I'll keep that and buy another one of those." Yeah. You've got to have a second camera, Hero. Raphael says, "I'm torn between the Batis 25 f2 and the 18 2.8. Want something for landscapes, but then in low light for concert photography using on an A7R III. Thoughts?" If you're dealing with low light and concert, well, I find f2.8 usually for me is good enough. You might find that the 25 is not wide enough. That could be the thing that may play here. It's hard. Someone else that has both of those lenses may be able to comment down below, Raphael, and say which one that they prefer. I've got the Batis 85 and I love that to death. So if anyone in the chat has got the Batis 25 f2 or the 18, can you chime in on this, even if it's in the comments down below afterwards? Because I'd be interested to know. I think if I was dealing with that size, there's a massive difference between 18mm and the 25. I would probably buy the 18, but let's see what other people say. Mark said, "It is felt along the sides when looking into the back of the barrel." Wow, interesting, Mark. So it's felt that comes out, is it, of the actual 70 to 200 itself? Haas says, "David, I'm loving the Tamron lens. I'm going to sell the 18 to 105. I don't mind the 28mm on APS-C as I'm used to the 24mm lenses. Would you say the A6500 and the Tamron lens is good enough to do paid gigs?" Yes, of course it is. There's nothing wrong with that at all. I've used the A6500 on pay gigs myself before. They're beautiful files that come out of it. Gerald said the Sony 24 1.4 GM, great lens, I suppose he's saying. Raphael said, I've thought about that bone too, but not out of my price range because I can get those Batis lens for roughly $700 to $800. Is that buying both, Raphael? Scott says, that zoom lens is on my Christmas wish list. Is that the Tamron, Scott? I've never ever looked back from getting that lens. In fact, before that, I was only shooting primes apart from my 16 to 35 and the 70 to 200. But that doesn't come off one of my cameras now. I just adore that lens. Hope you like pictures. I'm so happy with my A7 III, and how could you not be? That's for sure. Gerald says, I understand about the price, but I splurged and got it and love it. Never leaves one of my cameras. That's the 24, isn't it, Gerald, you're talking about? Ray said, the A7 III and the Tamron are the only items I've ever pre-ordered. Yep, and they are. They're so good, both of those, that's for sure. Michael said, it's a small recorder you can plug into any mic XLR input. It does a backup recorded track. You can plug it directly into the mixer and it fits in the palm of your hand. I'll have to have a look at that, Michael. Joe says, I finally made a live. Welcome, Joe. That Tamron 28 to 75, the best wedding camera lens out there because of the versatility, and it is. That's why I say to people, the focus is super fast. It's great for video. It's light, so it's great if you're sticking it on a gimbal. It's a great travel lens. And it's also fantastic due to that macro, almost macro look that you can get as well. It's so versatile and incredibly sharp. Ray said, the close focusing of the Tamron was the first thing that caught my eye. I know it is amazing. I very rarely ever put the macro lenses on anymore, Ray, and it's interesting. Haas said, David, since you use the Tamron all the time, I don't think you have trouble over the zoom and focus rings being reversed. No, I'm used to it. Look, when I first put it on, it did a few times grab one or the other. Now I never have to think about it. Yeah, so it doesn't bother me anymore. Mark says, many don't know that one can configure the touchscreen so that the face does not change the focus points. Yes, you can. You can do it so that you can just have quarter, half, and all that sort of stuff coming up as well. G'day, Ben. Good to see you in here. Hector says, Zeiss Loxia 21mm for Sony E-mount. This lens is good for video. Is it any good? Well, yes, it is a beautiful lens, but it's a manual focusing lens, so that's something you've got to consider, Hector. For me, because I'm doing fusion and doing it at the same time, I have to rely on good autofocus, so that lens is no good for me. If you're a videographer, and obviously then you could focus manually, I'd say that would be an amazing lens. Zero distortion, things like that, they're beautiful. But I just have to rely so much on autofocus, so you know that's something I can't get around, unfortunately. Dylan says, I love my 18mm, wonderful sharpness and contrast, don't have the 25 though. Yeah, I suppose a lot of people, Dylan, aren't going to have the 18 and the 25. And the thing is too, I suppose, and this is what I would recommend anyone does, is they get something like the 28 to 75 Tamron, and then they could get something like that 18 as your wide angle lens, and that would be a fantastic combination. So you've still got the wide angle there if you need it, and then obviously you've got the 28 to 75 on the Tamron if you need that lens as well, or a 24-70, something like that. Oreo said, I have the Batis and it works great, especially for video because the autofocus is blazing fast. For low light concert, I would pick the Sigma 21.4 instead. Terrific, sharp, fast lens. Does that struggle in video, Oreo, though? They usually do. That's one of the problems if you're dealing with video, though. Jason said, G'day. Thank you for replying to my message on Instagram. No worries, Jason. On there, in case you can't remember, are you going to mention that movie recorded with the Sony? Oh, yeah, that was... yeah, there was a movie recorded recently with the Sony, I think it was with the A7S II. I haven't got the link to that, what the movie was. Someone may be able to share it on there. But there was a full movie, but apparently the reviews of the movie haven't been very good, so I think the movie may suck. But it does show that you can film high-end movies with something like Sony E-mount. You know, I mean, that proves it. Cheers. Bloody hot out there. Oops. Mark said, just to explain a little bit about the felt issue, tiny particles fall off the felt and are very small wider spots. Interesting. I'll have to look out for that, Mark. John Pep says, I have the 25 f2. It's a great lens, but if you want wide angle, the 18 may be better. Yeah, that's what I was thinking, that the 18 probably is better if you want to go wide angle. G'day, Photomic. Good to see you in here. Love my Tamron 28-75 and A7 III. Also got the Miki battery grip with remote, which does time-lapse. The only thing I thought A7 III was missing from in its winning form. Yeah, it's stupid how Sony took the time-lapse apps out of those cameras. It's a pain. That's one reason why I've kept the A7 III, A7R2 I mean, because those apps are all built inside. I'll show you the exact apps that I do use, and I use them quite a lot. Let me go to apps. So the ones that I'm using all the time, I've got multiple, and look, I play around with these a lot, but I still use them occasionally to get something interesting. I've got multiple exposure in there. You can see where the apps are sitting through here. Let's just see if I can get it focused. So these are the play memory apps. I've got multiple exposure. I've got motion shot because I like to play around with that sometimes. It's like stop motion. Sky HDR is really interesting because it will put in... it puts in gradients, so it's like putting in a variable ND. So you can have it, so it gives you a gradient for the sky, and I use that quite a lot. Light painting is an interesting one that you can use. It's an interesting app. Touchless shutter I use. Star Trail is real fun too. And the other thing that I use is the smooth reflections. I love using smooth reflections if I haven't got an ND and I want to travel like I'm on holidays or something. Smooth reflection gives you that ability to get something like your water to become smooth, but you can do it in broad daylight. And I really like using that, and you get some fun results using those. And I've also got Light Shaft, which is a bit gimmicky, but you know, I bought it anyway. I haven't used that, to be honest. But smooth reflections I use all the time, and obviously the main one that I like to use is the one that I've highlighted there. Let me see if I can get that in focus. Is the time-lapse app. So that's what Sony have got rid of, and it really is. It just does my head that they haven't got that internal. I'm just hoping all the latest cameras, and they did mention about that bringing back apps. I'm hoping that they do bring that back, because having that in camera is a real benefit when you want to have a bit of fun. Now, I'm not saying I use that for paid work, but if I want to shoot for fun and things like that, they're great things to just have. If I'm traveling, for instance, that smooth reflection app, the Sky HDR, is great fun to play around with. That's why I kept my RX100 Mark V due to that. Or is it my RX100 Mark IV, I should say. No, I think it's 5, isn't it? Let me just go back to this. Where were we? Light Camera Action says, is there any updates for the Sony a7S III? No. It doesn't look like we're going to get an A7000 before Christmas now either, does it? I don't know why Sony are holding back on those cameras. It's interesting. Like I've said to you before, they have to answer the XT3. But perhaps sales perhaps they're not suffering in sales, and that's the reason why they're just holding off at this stage. So, and remember, the A7 III you still can't just get in a shop. You've still got to pre-order it. Very rarely can you walk into a shop and just buy one. You've just got to be lucky. So that camera is still selling like hotcakes. And I'll talk about that a little bit later when we look at the Lensrental article, which is interesting as well. But you know, perhaps Sony just aren't in any hurry any longer, and who knows when they're going to release the A7S III. It might be held back because of that 8K sensor that I'm going to talk about in the next story, actually. So we don't know. We just don't know yet. Dutch Aussie Production says, you just convinced me to buy the Sony a7 III instead of the BM. Yeah, I would definitely buy that instead of the Blackmagic. Good to hear good to hear about the great use you get out of yours. Good to listen to an Aussie. Thanks, mate. Hector says, got it, thanks for answering my question. Paul says, David, did you ever do a review of the 2875 on APS-C? No, I haven't, and I should do that, actually. That's something, perhaps I'll do that in the coming weeks, Paul. James said, Sony shot the entire Hollywood movie using full-frame mirrorless camera, the Possession of Hannah Grace. Yep, it was on Engadget. Yeah, you could Google that. What lens do you recommend for filming videos? I recommend that. The Tamron 28-75, definitely. I love it. The other one that I love is the Sony 55 1.8. I adore this one for videography as well. They're my two favourite lenses. It's even got the ND on there. It's a Polar ProMaster ND there as well. So I recommend that, the Sony 55 and the Tamron 28-75. I adore both of those lenses for shooting video. Fantastic. Haas says, Sony Pony, has it ever drained while the camera's off? I find the A6500 drains all the time when the camera's off. The A7 III and the A9 don't seem to do that. Well, they don't do it as much where I've noticed it, but the A6500 drains badly when the camera's off. So does the A6300. Photomig, yeah, they did shoot at one with the iPhone as well. Dutch Aussie Production says, bloody hot out there. Yeah, I know, it's 40 degrees Celsius here. Like I said, it's about 105 Celsius. What else? Jason put the link there for the movie. Thanks, Jason. Hero says, say it like this, Lord Oastler, I with a K on the end. James said, I decided to get the D500. It's a good camera. Got it at a great deal, but still going to get the Z6 later, maybe the Z6 too. Ario said, no problem in video mode with the Sigma 21.4. I even use the Canon version with the MC11 and it does well. Interesting. Thanks for sharing that, Ario. Actually, all lenses wider than 35mm focus well on the Sony A series camera. Are they as quick and as silent as the Sony lenses now, Oreo? Let us know in the chat. I'll be curious to know. Hero says, yeah, I'm not a scholar. Back to taking pics. Photomix says, the Z6 II going to shut down the game. I don't think so, Photomix. Hero says, it better have 4 card slots. Why? I know, I agree. Why take the apps away? That was nuts. I mean, I just cannot understand why Sony took those apps away. I really can't. Benji said, keep the A6500. Yeah, and that's what I said. Delta Dave says, the A6500 doesn't have dual card slots. Yeah, and that's why I wouldn't use it now for a paid shoot, Delta Dave. After that happened to me, I swore I'd never use it again. I was a bit blasé, and I'm honest to you guys about that. I used to defend Sony about only having one. Look, it was always in my mind. When I used to shoot weddings, it was always in my mind, boy, what happens if a card fails? But remember, I did back them up all the time onto that portable hard drive that I had that you could just plug the card in. But I could have still had the potential to lose a shot in between backups, and it was always on my mind. And then after it actually happened to me, it changed my thinking completely. Remember, I came from the Nikon and I was using the D4S and the D800 and things like that that all had dual card slots. So I did give that up when I went to Sony. And it was always on my mind. But after it happened to me, I swore I'd never do it again. And I never will. Only has to happen to you once on a paid job and you'll never do it again. Photomix said, I agree. Nikon chasing Sony down. I don't think Canon in the mirrorless. Well, I disagree a bit, James. I think Canon is probably, in the end, going to be the one that's number one. The issue that you're facing here, and I'll talk to you about this when we go into the Lensrental document later on. Canon has a huge marketplace. Now, I'm not saying that their camera is any good. I think it's a crap release. That EOS R is just terrible. I mean, 1.8 crop, no dual card slots, no IBIS. The focus actually is very sluggish. I mean, if you're dealing compared to the other, like the 5D Mark IV or whatever, the focus on that camera is not very good at all. It takes nice stills, yes, big deal, but if you're dealing with anything with Fusion, it's terrible. But remember, they still have to announce their high-ended model yet, and that's still coming. Whereas Nikon have showed their hand, they've released both cameras. Sony still have to release their cameras coming up, the A7S III. We know it's going to come eventually, and the A7000, we still have to wait. But Canon have a huge lead in the number of lenses that they've got out there, the number of sales that are being bought. And they have a big market out there. And I still think over the long-term goal, if you like, of what's going to sell, I think Canon probably will be number one. Photomic's going to disagree, but I think Canon will be number one, Sony will be number two, and Nikon will be number three. That's what I think is going to happen. And if you look at the Lensrental articles, it's almost proven by that I'll talk about shortly. But I do think that Sony have done very, very well, and they're going to continue to do very well. I suppose they also are releasing all their sensors, like when you're dealing with the 8K sensor. I'm going to talk about that in a minute. We're going to be in another 2 hours here. But I think Canon number one, Sony number two, and Nikon number three. Let me know in the comments if you think I'm right. Where are we? Mike Photomix says, I was shooting with the Nikon Z6 and the Canon ESR today for about 4 to 5 hours. What did you think, Michael? The DJI Pocket, no, I'm not going to get that at this stage until some real reviewers come out with it. I'm not sure the reviewers out there are being too honest, the ones that I've seen, because apparently there's auto-focusing issues and things like that none of them mention. So I'm going to wait for real reviewers to review that. James said, which do you prefer, the Canon or the Z6? I mean, I'd definitely get the Z6 over the Canon, that's for sure, if I was buying cameras. You can't compare the Z6 to the Canon release. It's got IBIS. I mean, it hasn't got a fold-out screen, that's the one thing. Yeah, it's got IBIS. It's got better dynamic range, much better focus. The Z6 is a much better camera than what the Canon has released. Michael said Canon for everything other than video. Video, Nikon has it. What else have we got? What's the Facebook group called? It's, I'll put it down here. I'll stick it in the comments. Make sure that you put the @ in, the and symbol in there, because if you don't do that, if you don't put the and like that, you can't write and, you won't be able to find it. Sigma, Haas says, David, Sigma lenses do make an electronic jittery sound, whereas the Tamron seems silent. Yes, it is. The Tamron's dead silent. I can't hear it at all. And any Sony lenses, I haven't heard any audio either. What eye cup do you use for the A7 III? Well, at the moment, I've just got the standard eye cups, but I have got the Hoodman ones, but I've taken them off at the moment because I've been trying to go as small as possible. So I've got the Hoodman one that you can see there. This is the glasses version, so it is quite big. But at the moment, I've just got the standard ones on there. Appreciate if I could get a thumbs up too, guys, if you could give me a thumbs up. Before we go on to the next one, Joel says, Hector says, I see B&H as the Sony 55 for $776. Used, what do you think about buying used lenses? Should I buy it instead? Well, I don't have any issue with used lenses at all. If you're not happy with it and you've got it from B&H, you can always return it. Like I said, a good used lens often is as good as a brand new one. So I wouldn't hesitate to buy it if you can get a decent enough price for it. Oreo said the Sigma 21.4 is as quiet as a mouse. Oh, thanks, Oreo, for sharing that. Daryl said, hi, David, would love it if yourself and Kerry did a Q&A on how you started into your business and how you progressed into your business today. I have started to do that, Daryl, in setting up my photography business. I've just haven't had the time to go back to it. So if you search through my site, you'll actually see where I go through all the gear I've used and everything else, and I am going to expand on that in time. So there is an actual whole set of videos that's there, a playlist that talks about setting up a wedding and photography business. Kerry is more the business side though, and that's why it'd be interesting to have her talking about that side of it. Kerry is more business side of it. I'm hopeless on the business side. I'm more into art. For me, everything is about art, and the two sides don't match. So I'm terrible at business, but Kerry's very good at that side of it. So yeah, it could be good if we did that. Hero says, I swear I can't go anywhere without seeing Canon all over the place, so it will be top of game when they finally go. And it will. The Canon are everywhere. Aaron's just said, hey guys, good evening. G'day, Aaron. Flying high, I'm a Canon user and still waiting for anything good. The newest version was a serious disappointment. Yeah, and it is. I'm hoping for you guys that the next version is a decent release, and I've got a feeling it probably is going to be due to the fact that those lenses are so good. The lenses are amazing, the Canon lenses that are released for the EOS R, but they just don't match that body. So if they can fix that up, they're going to have a great system. James said, wow, I just fell out of my chair. David said he would get a Z6 over the Canon. I tested the 24mm Sigma 1.4 for video on the A7 III and it was awesome. It sucked when I put it on the A7R2. Interesting. Mark says, what's your best guess on the release of the A7S III? Probably March, April is my best guess at this stage. Do you have a background video on how to hold Fusion cameras? No, I'm going to put one together though, Joel. So I will put one together for you about that. A7 III is the best camera yet. Yes, it is. 3 trees. I bought my 55 used from B&H. It's been flawless. They let you return, no problem. Yes, they do. All right, let's go to the next story. So the next story is this. I wanted to discuss this fairly quickly. Because there's a couple of extra rumours coming out about these 8K sensors that are going to be released. And they're saying down here that they're talking now about it being announced at the CES conference in January. But at this stage, they're only saying that there's going to be 8K TVs announced. Now, just remember, this is why I think this is going to happen. They've just started doing 8K broadcasts in Japan. It will start to take off, and I believe by the 2020 Olympics, there's going to be a lot of it going around. So it is a matter of they are broadcasting now in 8K. Now, I'm not saying you have to run out and buy an 8K TV, and I'm not saying you have to shoot in 8K. And this is the argument that I had with people talking about using 4K. And every time I post something about 4K, people say, oh, no one's got 4K TVs. Well, I don't think that's true anymore, but they're always saying, oh, no one watches 4K TV anyway. They don't get the fact that you shoot in 4K to give you better footage at 1080p. When you downsample 4K footage, you get better footage. So, and that's one aspect of it. When you shoot in 4K, you can crop that footage in it to 100%. So it means really that you're getting multiple focal lengths. And that's another massive advantage with shooting 4K and then working in 1080p. The problem is we haven't got anything 4K 60p at the moment on the Sony side, and that's why I'd love to get 4K 60. But if you want to run 4K 60 and then blow that up, that's where you need 8K. Now, I'm not saying it's available yet, but just because Sony adds that in a camera does not mean that you have to use it. And this is why I laugh at people going, oh, no one will use 8K or whatever. Big deal. You might have the option in the camera to shoot 8K to an external device when that becomes available. How much was a 1 gigabyte drive 5 years ago? Compare how much that is today. And often, what I'm saying to you is, what is the price going to be in 2 years' time for these massive hard drives, even 3 years' time? How big are these hard drives going to be? We don't even know what's going to be available in that time. You can't hold technology back, and people that do these sort of things and say these things are walking around with blinkers on their face and saying it will never happen. Well, it wasn't that long ago that you would never picture shooting 4K on an iPhone. And now that's basically, you can do that every day. So guys, this is going to happen. And basically what they're saying here is that, that they're going to announce 8K televisions, Sony. There's also going to be 8K laser projectors, and there's going to be an 8K camera and camcorder. And there's also going to be an 8K post-processing platform. Now, I'm not sure what that means, but it's probably some high-ended system for 8K broadcast and things like that. 8K transmission has started now in NHK, and by 2020, most camera manufacturers promise to release 8K cameras. So it's only a matter of time. But to expand on that, I noticed there was an SR5 update this morning on Sony Alpha rumours. or it may have been yesterday, I'm not quite sure. But they're saying that, and this is the interesting thing, and this doesn't surprise me at all. They're saying that the new sensors that are going to come out, the 50 and the 36 megapixel, and also the 54 8K sensors, have to have this proprietary Sony interface, which is this SLVS EC interface. Now, unless Sony give that out to other manufacturers, the sensors are going to be crippled. And you'll notice down here, if you read, it says here, the full sensor power can only be used if the company buys the proprietary Sony SLVS EC interface too. Without it, you cannot have the full sensor potential. Sources told me that it was highly unlikely that companies like Nikon and Panasonic will suddenly start to use these interfaces, a source told me. So I think what's probably going to happen here is, it says here, this new info makes it more likely that these sensors will be used in future Sony cameras like the A7S III, the A9 II, or the A9R. And Nikon and Panasonic will probably use the same sensor but with crippled features. Now, Sony have done this before. Sony have actually released sensors before, and they haven't basically enabled everything to other providers. For instance, the A9 sensor is not available to anyone else at this stage. It's only available to the Sony A9. So they may do a similar thing with these sensors. It may be crippled when other people use it, and it will only be, and it makes sense to me, it makes business sense to me, that they'll only allow that full sensor to be used with the A7S III or the A9 II and the upcoming sensors. Nikon, if they use it, and Panasonic, if they use it, will have a dumbed down or a crippled down version that probably will not work to the full extent that Sony will give that sensor. So that's really interesting. And, you know, I do think that there's a potential or a possibility that we may get an 8K sensor in the A7S III. Remember, Sony did say that they were going to meet and beat all expectations on that camera. That could be one thing that they throw in there to really blindside everyone that's out there. I'm not saying you'll have to use it, but it's there if you wanted to use it. And that's the thing that they may give us, that, you know, they may pull this rabbit out of the hat and give us that. But we have to wait and see. So let's open that up to the chat. I'll be really curious to know what you guys think about that. Sam said, let me just come back to here. Sam said, you also get a second chance at re-releasing the same video at 4K when more people are able to view in 4K. And that is one point. You're future-proofing your videos, Sam, and that is a good point. Hero said, I'm watching this on my 65 4K TV. Can you imagine how huge Lord Oastler looks right now? I love it. Sam said, after Black Friday here in the US, I'm sure there are tons more people with 4K. It's becoming more and more popular. I watch Netflix 4K all the time and I love it. That's what someone said to me the other day. Oh, no one watches 4K TV. I said, I watch it every day. I watch 4K Netflix every day. Photomix says, I'm not saying never, but I'm saying not for another 5 to 10 years. I think we're going to be before that, Photomix. Hero says, yeah, I dumped all my 1080p TVs this Black Friday and they're all 4K now. Gerald Williams said the 30 megapixel stills you can pull off an 8K video or make sports and event shooting much better. I know, how incredible is that going to be when you can pull those stills off that 8K video? Photomix says US internet speeds are not fast enough to support 8K. Blaze King said, laugh out loud. Hero said, I only watch Lord Ike's videos in 4K too. Blaze King said, I'm desperate for 12K. When is it coming? I love it. Not for at least 12 months. I heard the A9 II is going to be 10K and make sandwiches too. Photomix said, this is all fanboy talk now. This is where I just sit back and laugh. Michael Mistra, well, you're going to come back and you're going to have to give me an apology, Photomix, if that's released next year. Michael says, if I had to do it over again, really, it would be Sony, then Canon, then Nikon. I would go the A7 III, then Canon ESR because of its ergonomics, then the Z6, but really at this point any of them will work. And you're right, if you're dealing with any of those cameras is way better than anything we had previously. Like I said, the big thing about that for me is the dual card slots aren't available on those cameras. If the Nikon had that, that would have been a fantastic release. And I really don't understand why they never put that in, particularly in the high-end model. It's crazy. Gerald said, enjoy the Z camera now. When the Sony's next camera come out, it'll be a whole new ball game. Me, Sony fanboy for sure. Me too. Photomix said, Gerald, let me know when someone is creative enough for it to actually make a difference. Oreo said, for Tokyo 2020, all stores will sell 8K TV. Blaze King said, question off topic. Does anyone here know who makes a hot shoe 180-degree swivel mount to flip an external monitor front to backward quickly? No. Robert said, I have the NEX6. What should I upgrade to? Oh, boy. Well, A6500 it will be a great upgrade. If you can afford it, definitely the A7 III. Dutch Audio Production says, Aussie Production says, David, some comments have at David Oastler. How do I do that? You've got to just put the at and David Oastler. It should come up, Dutch Aussie Production. So if you put the at ampersand and then David Oastler, you should see my name highlighted, and then you can do that from there. All right, so let's go to the next story. Gerald says, it will make a difference, and David Oastler and I will both make a difference and show you. I love it. Like I said, this is like a bunch of mates. I love it. It cracks me up. Sitting around the table having a drink, and we always say putting shit on each other. Oh, I love it. All right, next story. Lensrentals. This is going to upset Photomiac. Lensrentals breaks down the numbers behind the most popular cameras and lenses of the year. This is a really interesting story. I'm not going to go through the whole thing. I will put the links down below. But basically, if you're dealing with this links, it's really interesting because let's read this. Well, it's saying here, now Lensrentals, remember, gives you a guide on cameras that are being sold because people will rent the bodies or rent the lenses when they're buying into that system, or even if they're interested in trying out systems. But they're saying the interesting thing here is, though, that year over year, though, Canon is down from 44.9% to 41.5%. Sony and Nikon both increased from 24.67 to 26. So Sony went from 24.67 to 26.31, and Nikon went from 15.6 to 15.28. But this doesn't take into account the new Canon ESR and the Nikon Z6 and Z7 cameras, so the figures may vary a little bit. But the interesting thing is here that if you look at this, and this is why I'm saying that Canon will still be number one, I believe. Canon is 41.5% of all of the Lensrentals that get put out. Sony is next with 26.31. So they're clearly in second place if you look at that. Nikon is third. Then you're getting down to Panasonic, Fuji, Leica, Olympus, Pentax, and Hasselblad. And this is why I'm saying that I still believe this is the way this is going to be in the future. We're going to have Canon as number one due to the fact that they have such a big marketplace and they're so big that I don't see Sony taking over Canon, if ever. But Sony are going to be in a good place in the market, and that's really all I'm worried about, that they're still going to be surviving and still doing very well. Nikon, you'd have to be a little bit disappointed looking at those figures, though, about how much is being rented. Sony, if you look at that, have clearly leapfrogged Nikon into second place, and that's really interesting. Like I said, I'll stick this in the comments down below. But the interesting thing here too is they're talking about cameras that are being rented out the most, and you've got the 5D Mark IV, 5D Mark III. The A7S II is actually being hired out more than the Sony Alpha A7 III, which is interesting. Then you've got the GH5. You've also got the Sony A7R III. Nikon D70, Canon 6D Mark II, the Nikon D850, and that's really interesting because I think that's probably the best digital SLR out there, but it just shows how Nikon probably is struggling in the marketplace a little bit. That kills the Canon 5D Mark IV. But if you look at lenses, it's a little bit closer between Sony and Nikon. Canon are clearly in front again, but I wanted to share this with you because I wanted to talk about the main lenses that are being rented. And this is quite interesting. They're saying the Sony 24-105 f4 is rented the most, the Sony 16-35 GM, and the Sony 100-400 5.6 is also rented. Panasonic, you're dealing with those lenses, and Canon, you're dealing with all of those lenses as well. This is really quite interesting, and I'd love to know your thoughts about this in the chat in a second. Also, let me know in the comment box down below what you think about this too. It's quite interesting if you look at Lensrentals and how that, where those numbers are actually sitting. So I'm going to open it up to the chat, but I just need another sip of my coffee before we do this. I'm laughing at Photokina. Laugh out loud, guys. I've got an 8K sensor, proceeds to shoot videos of a model against a white backdrop. That's a cracker. Gene says, hey, I'm getting my A7 III soon. You're going to love it, Gene. It's just amazing. Gene said, sold 2 of my Nikon lenses and hopefully my Nikon D800. That's what I used to have. I think I had the D800 and then I bought the D810. Jason said, I'm surprised high megapixel cameras aren't being protested against due to skin shaming in today's snowflake world. Oh, I love it. Photokina says, most of you all ain't pretty enough to be trying to vlog in a 4K, let alone 8K. Photokina's going off about the 8K stuff. I love it. I don't vlog past 1080 though, Photokina, either. Krat said, yes, but some people are renting Canon glass to use an adapter. Good point. Dylan says, I would prefer the sensitivity of the lower resolution sensor in the A7 III as opposed to the higher resolution of the 8K sensor. Well, you don't know yet what is going to happen in that. What voodoo are Sony going to come out with to give amazing... When you think about that the A7S III is matching what the A7R, the A7S II was giving us, apart from ridiculous high ISOs. It's incredible when you think that that's a 24 megapixel sensor as against a 12 megapixel sensor. So I don't think you're going to see the 50 or 60 megapixel sensor in the A7S III. You'll probably see the 30 odd megapixel one, but you don't know how good that is going to be yet. You don't know what they've done with the technology. Jason said that's a pro of the Canon ESR, 1080p and 720 for slow motion. I know, it's terrible. 720p for slow motion and it hasn't even got autofocus. Photokina says, don't try me. Photokina's going off. Oh, I love it. Jason said, I want an Instagram camera, 6 megapixel downsample to 2 megapixel. Sam said, that coffee must be intoxicating. Laugh out loud. I love you guys, though. It cracks me up. It really does. Michael says, this is some Fuji. Gene says, I should send you my coffee from New Orleans. Yes, please. Yeti Drone said, so the Fusion is the future, shooting video and then extracting stills. Well, I do believe that's probably going to be what happens in the future, yes. And once they release global shutters, it will change a lot of things too, because you'll be able to use flash as well. Remember that the issue is, though, with video, you can't use flash at this stage. So that's one thing that you've got to consider when you have to push the shutter to get a decent still out of it. Because if you're dealing with using 50 frames per second and then you've got an object moving, you're going to get motion blur. I often do rack the shutter speed, though. And, I'll sometimes be even 2,000th of a second. And then you could even get sports. You could drag a sports image off an 8K sensor. It is going to happen. It's just a matter of when. Panasonic do it really well with the GH5. I did used to extract those images and they were quite good. You have to try and keep that shutter speed to, say, 125th of a second, though. So you can't follow the double the format rule, of say, 50p if you're dealing with 1080p, 1080, 24p. You do 1/50th of a second. So you've got to up that. But I don't mind that anyway. But videographers will say you don't get that video motion blur that they love. I personally don't like that motion blur, though. I always like to shoot at higher for that reason alone. So I do believe it's the future, though, yes. I have a coffee that would make your hair grow. That'd be good. Gerald says, Canon overall numbers for ILC include all the digital SLR and compacts too. Sony is still first in full-frame camera sales, and they will fight to stay on top. The sensor tech of Sony wins. I agree there. Yeti said, when would you be available to podcast? Probably after Christmas. I wouldn't be available to do anything before Christmas with any podcasting at all because I'm flat out at the moment. Mike said, who do you suggest to rent the 24GM in Victoria? I don't know who would rent it, Mike, because I don't think it'd be even available yet. They're so hard to source that I don't think anyone would have them for rental. I never rent any lenses though, so I can't even tell you who you would go through. I know Michaels have a camera rental division. I'm not sure how much Sony gear they have though, but I don't think you get the 24 GM at all. Is it buffering again? Ray. Sam said, bring on the 8K overlords. Processing it will suck and storage will also suck. I know it will. I work in a computer business selling custom desktop computers, so more people with 8K cameras means more business for me, and it certainly does. That's so true. Yo, Ken, why is it so dark in this basement, Fuji? That's what Delta Dave sent me. I love it. Have a look at it. Oh, God. This being another short show. Yeah, it's another short show, Rick. How long have we been going? 1 hour, 19 minutes. I've still got another 2 stories. 10 to 4, thanks, bro. We'll contact you via email. No worries, Yeti. All right, let's go next story. Time for a bit more coffee. These are only going to be 2 quick ones anyway. Photokina, I only wanted to talk to you about this, that it's been cancelled for next year. So I suppose that's going to have an effect on things that are announced next year. I'm not sure about how relevant these sort of trade shows are anymore, though, due to the internet. You have such good access now on the internet. If you notice, I think they're postponing it until May 2020, yeah, instead of September next year. If you notice, Apple don't even go to the trade shows anymore. They no longer have setups at any of the trade shows, and I think that's because they believe they can just broadcast the stuff live themselves, and they can basically put everything over live online, and then reviewers and all that sort of stuff promotes it anyway. Here in Australia, we don't really have them anymore. We used to have trade shows every year, and they've fizzed out now, and I think we might have now one every couple of years or every 3 years, I'm not sure. And they're really small in size. I'm not sure how relevant they actually are, apart from geeks like me that like to go and have a look at everything and sort of talk to other people and socialise and sort of do stuff like that. How relevant are they? And I'd love to know your comments about that. I probably think that it is almost irrelevant now, that you can just get everything online, and when anything is announced, it's always online anyway. I suppose the thing that you don't get to do is go and touch it and feel it and things like that you can do if you go to these trade shows. You can actually try the gear there and have a play around with it and stuff like that, but you can't get to do that if it's online. But like I said, Apple now don't do it at all, so are other manufacturers going to do that? It's just interesting to see what happens. So let me know what you think about that. I'm not going to go to questions yet. I'm going to go to another one, and then we'll open it to Q&A. So that's Photokina has basically postponed itself until 2020. And the next story, I just had to put this in because I thought this was hilarious. Samsung have been caught using a digital SLR photo to fake its phone portrait mode. What do these people think? I mean, that you would do that? I mean, that is just nuts. I mean, you get quite a good result from the portrait mode from these cameras, so I don't even know why you would need to do that. It's really interesting, and how stupid are they to do that? And I just wanted to quickly show that. I thought that was hilarious. So let's open it up to Q&A. So it can be anything, basically, guys. We can have and talk about whatever, and then obviously we'll finish up. Let's have a look and see what people are actually saying. Let me just quit that Q&A screen. Sabir said, David, how does your Tamron 28-75 focus in low light? Great. I've had serious low light hunting. Oh. With my A7R3 and the Tamron 28-75. No, I haven't had that at all. Have you upgraded the firmware on that? And is it the latest firmware on your A7 III? You may have a faulty lens, Sabir, because I've noticed. I mean, look, it's not in low light, and I'm talking real low light. It's not like using this. And if I did go to real low light, I'm always going to jump to this lens immediately, which is the Sony 55 1.8. This is my go-to low light lens. This will focus almost in pitch black. So this is the one I'll go to if there's anything extreme going on. But I use that all the time. I used it the other day. If you check that video out where I did the fusion video of the wedding that I did the other day, and I was doing the dance video at the end, near the end. That was really quite dark, and the camera had no problem focusing at all. You may have a bit of a faulty lens. Photomix said, Sabir said, that was the moment I realised the Tamron is just not an overall reliable lens. Well, perhaps you've got a faulty one. What else have we got? Gerald said, look to CES show for Sony announcement. Yes, possibly. Sabir said, that was the moment I realised, that was not an overall reliable lens. But I haven't heard very many people saying that, Sabir. So other people in the chat, let us know, because I can only go by the lenses I've got, and mine has no problem focusing in low light. Let me know if you've had any issues with it, because I'd be curious to know. Photomix says, the problem with everything online and the lack of contact is with people. Yeah, I know that. Apple has their own trade show. It sucks that photo conventions are the thing of the past. I like actually touching cameras and lenses, not clicking on Anorama and B&H for a camera. The problem is, though, Photomix and also Hero, that they're getting very, very expensive. And that's why a lot of companies are moving out of those areas now. They're just finding it's not cost effective. And that's why you're finding a lot of people now aren't going to those shows. But I agree, it is nice to go and feel the gear. Photomix is having a place to meet fellow artists. I've met a lot of great people and learned a lot at trade shows. Lord Oastler, what would you say about the Olympus EM1 rumours? You think it will be 4K with liquid cooling? Judging by the size, it better have liquid cooling. I don't know, I haven't heard about that yet. Olympus make great cameras though, the best stabilisation in the market though. I used to have an Olympus, EM1 I think I had, and I liked it. Yeah, it was good. Hero says, truth, people just don't like talking in person anymore. Sabu says, I bought it 5 days ago. Well, you may need to return it. Gerald says, Mr. Post, just to back up Oreo, the Sigma Art 21.4 is silent and autofocus and fast. Thanks for that, Gerald. Could you tell me the links to update to the firmware? It's with low light. Well, if you've only just bought it, I would think it would have the latest firmware in there. If you go to... I'll just show you where it is. If you go to your settings, you've got the A7R2. Let me just bring it up and I'll show you. If you go into your, it's like the suitcase icon at the back there. So if you go onto that and then you scroll to 7 of 7, and then check your version settings, it should have the lens as 0.2. It's showing that my camera firmware is version 2 and the lens firmware is version 0.2. That's the latest firmware. So if you've got the latest firmware, I'd be thinking about returning your lens or getting it checked out. Michael said, hero shots, that's because some people breath staying on the shot. Are you talking about the trade show? By the way, did anyone see Jason's latest YouTube saying his A7 III camera overheated? A7R3 camera overheated, did it? I could share with you the samples to show low light how it was and have a clear idea. Well, you don't really need to share it, Sabar. If there's an issue with it really focusing, a problem in low light, like I said, mine's fine. I haven't had an issue with focusing at all. I'd get it checked. Jason said, are you talking about the desert shoot? His camcorder overheated, not any of his Sony bodies. Oh, okay. Sam said, I like what Sony is doing with its B-Alpha events. If they don't spend money on trade shows and more on these, more personal events is much better. Yeah, I agree with that. It probably would be. Mark said, yes, he did say it was the A7R3. Interesting. Remember, I had them shut down, though, on me when I did it on a ridiculously hot day. They lasted for about 24 minutes and then they shut down. They're not designed. They do have an operating temperature. If you leave them in full sun and they get past that operating temperature over a massive period of time, they will overheat. It's just a fact of life. I haven't had it, though, in a real shoot. I only had it happen in that test. Okay, I will check it real quick. Yeah, well, you might need to send it back, Sabir, though. Mark said he had issues in the ice cave and then in Nevada. It sounds like he's had a problem. If it's inside a cave or something like that, and it's not in direct sun. It sounds like it's a camera fault. Mark Foss, the video with the A400, he never mentions the R3 overheating. Watch it to the end. If I'm wrong, my bad, I missed it. To be fair, it was like 110 degrees. There you go. And that's the thing. If it's 110, he should have known better to take Sony's out in that heat. And you're right, Phonomic, they don't function if you're dealing with that type of heat. There is a difference with the size of the body. Remember, if that's going to worry you, you need something like the GH4 or something like that that has that massive body and it will not overheat. If you put out an A7R3 or an A9 or an A7 III in temperature that's 110 degrees in direct sun and you're shooting 4K, it doesn't seem to affect it with 1080p. I've never had one shut down, but if you're shooting 4K, mine shut down, both of them shut down in about 25 minutes. And that is against the specs, and this is what you have to realise. If you check the specs, Sony will tell you that that's outside the operating temperature. Sabir said it's not that the lens doesn't focus, it does, but it's wondering if there's hunting or not with other users. Yeah, it sounds like you got an issue with that lens. Don't forget, guys, stay tuned for all the videos I'll be shooting. I may even do a couple of lives tomorrow from the city. I'm taking a whole stack of model groups out tomorrow, so doing a number of shoots. Stay tuned for that. I will have another wedding video up, that behind the scenes wedding video up early next week. And I am going to, like I said, start reviewing the lenses again that I'm using, like the 70-200 f4, the 35 1.4, the 55, all in separate shoots, posting that so you can see this all in shoots. So, you know, stay tuned for all that. So I want to give you a few extra things in the coming weeks. Michael said a Sony will overheat if you breathe hard on it. I've never had one overheat though in a real job, Michael. Luckily, I have had my iPhone overheat, but I haven't had one overheat in a real job. That test I had was a day like today, which was really hot, and it overheated in 25 minutes. Haha, Michael knows. It's in the Cali heat. Yeah, exactly. All right, guys, that'll be it. Stay tuned for the next video coming up in a couple of days or whatever. I will also put the timeline down, so if you don't want to watch all of this, obviously you can use that timeline. Please join the photography videography group as well. I'm probably going to have another coffee in a minute because it's, what is it now? Yeah, it's now hit 41 degrees Celsius. If I took my camera out there today, it would overheat, trust me. Mark said, I own the A7R3 and had issues after long shoots in heat. And there is a workaround which shall become another YouTube video soon. I'm setting up the studio. Dutch Audio, Aussie Production said, thanks, David. You have another follower. Thanks so much for following me, mate. Viking Creative Studio says, have you been shooting Sony now for 2 years? Never had it overheat during normal use. Neither have I. So I must say that I've never, ever had one overheat in a real shoot. So that's one good thing. Please, if you can too, I'd love some thumbs up because it does mean other people are going to watch the video. So please share if you can. Rui says, before we finish, I use the 28-75 in the A7 III and have not had any problems with low light focus. Neither have I. That's why I think that might be a faulty lens. Oreo says, good night. Yeah, you should be in bed, Oreo. It's very late over there. Michael said, you take the good with the bad. Sony #1 as my Sony just shuts off. Yeah, Jason said it was 115. Exactly. You can't complain about that, guys. I mean, let's be serious. Blaze King said, thanks, David. Keep being the stud that you are. Bye for now. All right, everyone. See you later. Bye for now.